Mrs. Duncan, would you like to say the prayer this evening?
Certainly. Loving God, as we come together tonight for the city of Waterville, we pause to ask you to be with us and guide our way. May your spirit of peace surround all we say and do this evening. We ask for your strength to do what is best for the good of Waterville. Lord God, as servants of your people, we pray that you grant us a share of your wisdom. Amen.
Please rise. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mrs. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mayor Barry?
Yes.
Mr. Rosick?
Here.
Mr. Pedro?
Here.
Mrs. Duncan?
Here.
Thank you. First, we have our approval of minutes from the regular council meeting August 27th, 2018, and we need a motion and a second.
I move to approve.
Second.
Are there any comments or changes or corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next, I have citizens' comments, and I don't have any up here. Any of all the citizens out there have any comments? One. Thank you. We'll move to our staff reports. First, we have our administrator, Mr. Bagdonis.
Thank you, Mayor. Council members have a copy of my report. I'd like to touch on a couple of items. First one, on our fire district feasibility study, we have not heard back from Providence Township. They have not signed a memorandum of understanding and have not responded to emails or a telephone message, so we can only conclude that they've decided not to participate in the study. Of course, we'll be moving forward with ourselves in Waterville Township and the Village of White House. And the consultant is working on gathering data right now to put the study together. Also, on the new bridge, starting tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday, beams for the first 3 spans will be delivered and set into place. And those will be coming from the west on US 24 and then through town on 64. So, of course, those will be very large loads, and there might be a little traffic disruption while they come into town and go between 24 and the bridge. That's the end of my report.
Thank you, Mr. Bagdonis. Do we have any questions, comments? I had one question on the bottom of your report, the call about the Lucas County engineer about the speed limit on the Anthony Wayne Trail by Dutch Road. Is that to change it?
Yes, between Dutch Road and I'll say roughly Canal, the road is split jurisdiction because a corporation line zigs and zags in and out on both sides of the road. And the portion that's in the city is 50 miles an hour. The portions outside the city are 55 miles an hour. And a resident along that stretch who's not in the city contacted the engineer's office to ask that the speed limit be lowered. And so the engineer's office is going to be looking into it.
Oh, okay. And one more. The meeting took place for the Union Cemetery District possibility. Did you have an update somewhere else? Was there any
I
news?
do. I didn't know if you wanted to
that's
cover
fine.
that under old business.
Or you could do, that's fine if you had it now.
Okay. I did meet with one of the township trustees and the administrator from the Village of White House, and in fact, it was just the end of last week that we met. And of course, we'll have some discussion tonight. White House's council meeting is tomorrow, and I understand they're going to be discussing the matter too. Just some observations that the 3 of us had. For Waterville and White House, whether the work is contracted or done in-house, the expense would have to come from our respective general funds. If the 3 jurisdictions work together, all of us will benefit. Over the last few years, there's been a lot of discussion about shared services in Ohio, and this is a pretty straightforward way to put that concept into practice. I know you've gotten some information on the Fort Meigs Union Cemetery, and Perrysburg Township have had that in place for over 100 years, and it's worked very well. One possibility that we discussed is perhaps there would be a joint meeting of the elected officials from all three jurisdictions, so everyone could be in the same room and ask questions and hear the answers at the same time. I don't know if there's any interest in that. And as we've mentioned, one feature of the Union Cemetery District is that there's required to be a joint meeting of all the elected officials of the participating jurisdictions once a year in May. And at that meeting, the budget and the tax millage of the district are reviewed and adjusted as needed, and that has to happen on an annual basis. So it's something that can be fairly tightly controlled.
Okay.
That was kind of a summary of our discussion.
Any questions on that status? I guess what's the next step on the meetings to see if we want to have a joint, probably?
Brett Warner is planning on attending the White House meeting. I'm also planning on being there. I guess if you all have any interest in some sort of joint meeting, I can pass that along and we can see if we can set that up and pick a location.
All right. I think we would be interested. Any objections to a?
No, I support that. I think it's best to have all
Everybody.
entities, yeah. And you might decide that another meeting might have to happen, but I think get us all in the same room and try it.
All right. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Next, we have our law director, Mr. Doby.
Briefly, Your Honor, to break with tradition, contrary to the article in the Blade regarding air monitoring and the Nexus pipeline, time is not running out. We have already undertaken the appropriate contracting to get that set up, and plenty of time to deal with the potential compressor station. I also checked with numerous other parties in the lawsuit that was previously wrapped up, and it appears that Nexus may not have all their capacity sold. As a result, out of the 4 compressor stations that were approved, there may be only 3. And since we're, I guess, at the end of the line, ours apparently is the one that's not under construction at this time, which will allow further time to deal with any air monitoring problems. And I believe the cheap shot from Ottawa Lake was just that. No more.
Thank you, Mr. Doby. Appreciate the follow-up on that. Next, we have our finance director, Mr. Gokenauer.
Evening. Council has a copy of my report for July 2018. We ended the month of July with an ending balance of $6,279,407. Our investment income at the end of July was $24,762. We have 2 reader reports in the report, July and August of 2018. The July collection was $364,040, which was about $16,000 more than we received in July of 2017. For August, the city collected $239,198, which was quite a bit less than we got in August of 2017, about $57,000 less. I took a look at the collections, and essentially, for whatever reason, all of our taxpayers, the withholders, the individuals, and the net profits were all lower in the month of August. So why that is, I don't know. You know, perhaps maybe seasonal work is ending. Story Point is almost done with construction. I don't know if that has any effect on seasonal type work, but it was down quite a bit from where it was in August of 2017. Year to date, the city has collected $2,445,000 and that's about 70.5% of our budgeted revenue for income tax. So had a bit of a drop in August. Hopefully we stay the course and we meet our budget projection for the end of the year.
Thank you. Any questions? Great, thank you. Next, we have our treasurer. Thank you. Our police chief, Chief LaGrange.
Evening, council members. Well, let's see, I got a little more tonight than I normally do. First off, I guess under old business, a new car is in. They picked up all the equipment that we stripped out of the old Crown Victoria. Excuse me. So it's down in Van Wert, and I anticipate we'll have the car in a couple of weeks. The speed signs also came in, and they are in the garage right now. We put one of them together just to see how it looks. Things are bigger than I thought they were. But they have a very nice display. Al Brunn was here from Public Works, and we went over installation options. And although the idea was to have these things kind of semi-mobile, semi-portable, we can move them around. Once you put the batteries in them, the sign itself runs about 57 pounds. And then the solar panel is another 20 on top of that, so we felt it wasn't real practical, so we're going to come up with 2 permanent locations. What we're looking at right now is right here on Mechanic as you come off the bridge into town. That's one area we get a lot of complaints. And then the other one that I thought we'd put it is on Michigan Avenue for traffic coming into town from Waterville, Swanton. That's another area where the speed limit drops. So we'll put it on Michigan Avenue there. And somewhere down the road, if money presents itself, we may look at a couple more other locations I had in mind were either end of the trail, again, where speed limits drop, on Farnsworth, where that speed limit drops coming into town, and then the other one on Waterville, Mount Clover there around the fire department someplace, again, where we drop from 45 to 35. We pretty well have the city covered by then, but that's down the road. Let's get the first 2 in, see how they work, what their life looks like after a winter, and how the solar panels, how well they keep them charged. Roche de Boeuf, of course, is on the 22nd. That's no real surprises this year. It's going to be pretty much the same as it is every year. We'll have the parade. We'll have one officer leading the parade, and then we'll have a couple of officers on foot in the area. But again, no big surprises there. And the final one, we do have a coffee with the cop now set on the schedule. It's going to be at Chowders on October 20th, which is Saturday. Be from 11 to 1. And at this time, we've heard from the Township, White House, and the Metro Parks. They're all going to have people there. We have not gotten a response from the State Patrol, but they do always tend to show up, so I expect there'll be a trooper there. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Chief, any questions? Comments? Thank you. Next, we have the fire chief's report, but he's on vacation this evening. Do we have any questions on the fire chief's info? All right, seeing none. Next, we have Public Works Director, Mr. Blair.
Thank you, Mayor. It's been just a short time since our last meeting, I think 2 weeks. So I really don't have anything to add to my report unless you have any questions. I think you all know that the work started in the Michigan Avenue water line. That'll run to approximately November 24th, I think it is.
Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Pedro.
I did talk to one citizen. They saw the signs go up and so forth. Just curious, how deep will that water line be, and do you know of any potential rock elevation issues along that path?
Approximately 5.5 foot in depth. We may get into a little bit of it over here at Prairie Park and maybe down the trail towards North Street, but it's unlikely.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Next, we have communication from council, committees. Mr. Bruno, do you have anything this evening?
No report tonight, Mayor.
Mrs. Bruno?
No report tonight, thank you.
No report.
Nope.
No
Mr.
report,
Rosie?
Mayor, thank you.
Mr. Pedro?
Just a comment, thanks to the chief of police. Can't thank the chief fire department, he's not here. But thanks for the report, and I'm glad to hear about the coffee with the police officers. I'm looking forward to attending. I know our safety committee talked about that, so that's good to know.
And then I think it's exciting that we have our annual parade and Richterbuff activity next week. So let's pray for good weather, right? Let's not. Who's in charge of the weather, Barb?
The Lord.
And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pedro. Mrs. Duncan?
No report this evening, Your Honor.
Thank you. I just had one item. I think I'm gonna pass it on to the Parks and Rec, but I believe they just met. But I had a letter from one of our young citizens, because she's in 8th grade, she told me. But she was interested. I got quite a detailed letter. With all the bike paths in Waterville, many more people are getting outside, and of course they wanna go down to, with the nice weather, down to Kroger, Rite Aid, the restaurants that are down by Kroger. She named a lot of the areas, and they're using the paths, which is very exciting. She realized one problem, that when people are running their errands, there's no place to put their bikes, especially down by the Kroger area, and it's pretty busy now. And I thought about it, and I thought that's true. I mean, you can put them on the sidewalk, but she suggested maybe think about putting something down there for them. I thought wasn't a bad idea. She also had something that might be popular that I'm just not aware of, but bike stations sometimes are on bike trails, and she goes into detail about what those could have, and she has a whole lot of ideas. So apparently they are bikers, which I like, so they ride around. But I think I might pass this on to our Parks and Rec, and they could at least talk about it. But maybe the actual bike racks that you see places, I thought about that. That might not be a bad idea up there. I've taken my bike a lot of times. I just park it there wherever, but not a bad idea in the busy area up there. So it's the only one I had for you this evening. I'll give that to, actually, I'll give it to you. Give it to Parks and Rec to think about too. Under old business, we discussed the discussion item, the formation of a Union Cemetery District, and we'll keep you apprised of that. Next, we have a public hearing for ordinance 15-18, an ordinance amending the zoning map of the city of Waterville by granting a special use permit to construct a self-storage facility on a 5.1 acre parcel of land on the east side of Prairie Boulevard, south of State Route 64, zoned C4, and declaring an emergency. We had our first reading July 23rd, our second reading August 27th, our third reading in tonight's public hearing in action is this evening, September 10th. So first, we'll open the public hearing to see if we have any comments, and I know we have a representative here, if you would like to say anything.
Name's Don, excuse me, Don Feller with Feller Finch and Associates, representing the applicant. As you indicated, this proposed self-storage facility is south of 64 on the east side of Prairie Boulevard. The access will actually come from the extension of Prairie Boulevard that's under construction right now. So when that's done, then that will provide the access to this area. It's also my understanding that there's an existing self-storage facility on the north side of 64 that's going to be closing down, so this one essentially be providing that same service on the other side of the road. The project will be built in 2 phases. The first phase will consist of, I believe, 197 storage units and an outside storage area. And phase 2 is proposed to be another 192 storage units. The project's was approved by the Planning Commission. We did request a variance on the parking requirements, which was approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals. And I think that pretty much covers it. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
All
It's
right.
my understanding that in light of the Devonshire extension, there will be no need for the cash to tap agreements that were initially discussed with respect to this.
No, I don't think that's true. The Devonshire extension stops partly into this property, which then eventually that will be extended farther. The fire chief has requested, and we've agreed to extend a water line beyond where the street's going to stop now to provide fire hydrant down in the vicinity of the outside storage area. And our discussion at the Planning Commission was that we would like to try to enter into some kind of a pay cash to tap agreement so that in the future, when that street is extended and people utilize that water line, that the developer could recover some of the costs of that.
Given we have not seen the agreement, you understand any approval would be subject to an appropriate cash to tap with the blessing of the city.
Understand.
All right. Other questions or comments for the public hearing or the public?
I have something, Mayor.
Yes.
But I don't want to. I don't want to start unless
No.
I can start though, Tim. Is that
Go ahead, John, go ahead, start.
I'm concerned about this being the first development on Prairie Boulevard. I know Prairie eventually is going to extend at least as far as Neapolis, Waterville, Neapolis Road, I think.
And
probably beyond
farther
that,
south, yes.
Farther south. And so, I certainly appreciate what the Planning Commission did in their review, but I'm not sure that this fits in with the overall master plan for that area. And I was just looking at the master plan for the city, and a couple things, just a couple little sentences concern me. This area, this is the US 24 concept area, remains one of Waterville's most important future growth areas. Every effort should be taken to minimize efficient and inefficient and incompatible arrangement of land uses. Mixed and integrated commercial, office, and residential land uses that share driveways are recommended, and creating a visually attractive environment in this area should be a priority. And I'm not fundamentally opposed to storage units, but I don't know if that is how we want to start development on in that area, since we don't know what else is, what other potential may be involved along Prairie Boulevard. You know, if the Meyer store actually develops, or if there's any proposals for office buildings, they may not want to be next door to a storage facility.
Thank you. Other comments?
The only I would say, because John and I talked the other day, and thinking more about it, there is an existing storage unit across the street, which is older. So it's a net zero game, because we're going to take down that old one, or someone's going to take down the old one, and the newer ones are going to come in. I share John's interest about development, and it's like the chicken or the egg. You wish that Meyer maybe would already be underway. So my vantage point is we're taking one away but replacing it with a nicer one. It's tucked into the, I would call it the commercial or business area. I would much rather it be there than sort of by residents. And like John said, I trust the Planning Commission that they researched it. The planning guide that John's referring to is a good tool. I don't know, it was probably drafted many years ago. And I would think that
2012.
it's not too old, not too old. But the point is that it's a guide. If there was two of those stations or two of those units, one across the street and this one, then I might have a little more concern. But I think it's a solid plan, and I would support it, or I do support it.
I would also mention, I think, it has the same requirements in that zoning of the landscape and everything else of other businesses, correct? To make it fit in that area aesthetically, I'm hoping. I mean, we're pretty stringent on how we landscape it. I guess I'm with Mr. Pedro that storage units maybe aren't real exciting, but believe it or not, they're very busy. I know the family that owns the one in White House, and it's amazing to me that it's always full, and they were building more. So I guess we're just an area where it's hard to find storage. And also, I hope, like Mr. Pedro, that it's a modern, nice-looking development that will fit in. I share Mr. Rosig's concern. It would be nice to turn the corner and have an office building there. But I do know the land right next to it should be the Meyer land, I believe, close to that, or further down.
Across the street.
Oh, over here.
Across the street.
So I don't think it's too bad. I think what has been, no one else has offered to buy the land over there except Meyer. So the developer and the landowners are kind of held to who comes to them to purchase something for business. So I would agree, as long as it's well done and it meets all the requirements that we have, which are pretty stringent on how it looks and how it's laid out. I would assume the parking's less because it's not a place where you need a lot of parking spots, and that's what you're referring to.
Yeah, typically in a self-storage facility like this, it doesn't require a lot of parking because
right.
there aren't a lot of people there at any one time. They kind of come and go quickly, stop near their unit, and do whatever they got to do and leave. So it's not really a lot of parking is required. Your parking requirements are quite extensive. I believe Mr. Bokenauer had indicated in his research that in looking at other communities around, the most stringent one he found would have required, I believe, 8 spaces. Does that sound right? And whereas your code required 44 spaces, I think, overall. And the Board of Zoning Appeals agreed that we didn't need that many. In fact, they suggested that it might be appropriate to kind of look at the code and see if maybe that requirement should be readdressed. I would also point out the unit that's here now, it fronts right on 64. These will be significantly south of 64. There's still another parcel, I believe, between these units and the gas station. So it's still, it's set back a ways. And we do have to provide landscaping along Parade Boulevard per your code.
Right.
And it does, and I believe that this self-storage facility does provide a significant benefit to the community.
Other comments or questions?
Are people gonna be allowed to put like motorhomes and boats and things like that outside?
Yes, that's the outside storage area on the south end, which will be part of the first phase.
Oh, I see, okay.
Which raises my other concern. Oh, go ahead. I don't want to interrupt, Barb.
Nope, go ahead.
A 6-foot fence won't shield, a boat on a trailer or a motorhome, which is the other concern I have, I guess, for the residents in Mill Creek. They'll be looking across the field at boat tops and motorhome tops.
Other comments?
Have they built in any kind of buffer, like for aesthetics purposes? Do you have to put any plants in the back? Kind of like a land mound?
I think the code only requires landscaping along Parade Boulevard. We are required to provide screening of some type where it adjoins the residential areas. That could be, and my understanding is that could be some kind of landscaping screening, or it could be a solid fence of some type, but we are required to screen it in some way.
Is that gonna be a budding R1? I mean, I see
No.
it.
No.
It abuts residential in the township, not the city. That's undeveloped
I
residential.
think it's agricultural, isn't it?
Right there.
Yeah, I think it is agricultural, which is kind of considered residential, I guess.
Yes, to Mr. Rosig's question, are there fences that have been used that would be better, taller? So, I don't know how tall you could go to make it.
Yeah, you can't put a 12-foot fence there probably, but it doesn't sound like a chain link fence is in the plans, but a fence shield, I assume that's not what they plan, chain link?
At this time, I'm not sure they finalized. Their original thought was a chain link fence with some kind of screening in the fence.
The only other comment I would make is, and again, it sounds like I don't like storage facilities, but they're very popular and they're all over the place, but it really adds nothing to our economic base in terms of employment and income taxes.
No, not for income. They probably have an employee, but, yeah.
Right.
Other comments for the public hearing? I'm gonna close the public hearing. And this is an emergency measure. I'm going to move that the rules be suspended to allow for the passage of ordinance number 15-18 as an emergency measure, and I need a second.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Brody?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
I'll need to abstain from voting on this.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mrs. Duncan?
Yes?
Mr. Pedro?
Yes.
Mrs. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Rosig?
No.
I'll move for final passage of ordinance number 15-18, first and final reading as an emergency measure. We need a second.
Second.
Is there any further questions or discussion from council? Roll call?
Did you read it?
Oh, sorry. We're now going to read it before the roll call. An ordinance amending the zoning map of the city of Waterville by granting a special use permit to construct a self-storage facility on a 5.1 acre parcel of land on the east side of Prairie Boulevard, south of State Route 64, Zone C4, and declaring an emergency. Do we need to redo our motions for you? Good. All right.
Passage.
I will move for the final passage of ordinance number 15-18, first and final reading as an emergency measure.
Second.
Okay. Any questions now on this part? Further comments? All right, roll call, please.
Mr. Rosig?
No.
Mrs. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Pedro?
Yes.
Mrs. Duncan?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Abstain.
Mayor Brody?
Yes. Next, we have ordinance 17-18, an ordinance amending Part 3 of the codified ordinances of the City of Waterville, Schedule 2 of the traffic schedules, speed limits by adding Prairie Boulevard. First reading held August 27th, 2018. Second reading is this evening, September 10th. Third reading and legislative action scheduled for September 24th, 2018. Any comments this evening on this one? Seeing none, we have ordinance 18-18, an ordinance amending Part 3 of the codified ordinances of the City of Waterville, Schedule 1 of the traffic schedules, stop and yield streets by removing the stop signs for both directions of Royal Hampton Lane at Buckeye Lane. Our first reading was held August 27th, 2018. Our second reading is this evening, September 10th. Our third reading and legislative action is scheduled for September 24th, 2018. Do we have any discussion on this one this evening? Further comments? Seeing none, we'll read that next time. Next, ordinance 19-18 is an ordinance enacting section 521.13 of chapter 521, Health, Safety, and Sanitation of the General Offenses Code with respect to the regulation of emergency alarm systems. Our first reading was held August 27th. Second reading is this evening, September 10th. Our third reading and legislative action is scheduled for September 24th, 2018. We discussed this at the last meeting. Do we have any further questions from council or comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to new business. First is Resolution 49-18, a resolution authorizing the transfer of cash funds from the General Fund 100 to the Parks and Green Space Fund 225 and the 5-year Capital Fund 325. Mr. Bagdonis, do you have more details on this one?
Yes, thank you. First of all, we did have a slight numbering glitch in the resolution, so on some of the agendas, it's listed as number 47, 18, it should be 49. And within this year's appropriations, we did have several fund transfers from the general fund to Parks and Green Space and the 5-year capital. Those were authorized in the appropriations, but as you've heard me say, with respect to other fund transfers, the auditor requires that specific legislation ratify those transfers when the finance director is going to actually make the transfers. So this resolution would meet that requirement.
Thank you. We need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next, we have Resolution 48-18, a resolution authorizing the municipal administrator to enter into a contract with Meyer Hill Lynch Corporation for the purchase and installation of a new telephone system for the municipal building, fire station, and public works. Mr. Bagdonis, would you like to give us further details on that?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The current telephone system in this building, in the fire station, the Public Works Department, it's actually a Centrex system, and it's at least 20 years old. Replacement equipment is becoming more difficult to find. The system lacks a lot of basic features such as conference calling. Meyer Hill Lynch does the technical assistance to us on our internal computer network, and attached to the resolution is a quote for the purchase and installation of a new telephone system. This system would utilize the voice over internet protocol and session initiation protocol trunk lines. A big advantage of this particular system is that the server for the new system will be compatible with our existing computer server, and therefore those two servers will be redundant to each other. In other words, providing backup if one of them is down, the other one can cover both the computer system and the telephone system. Purchase and installation cost of the new system is within the amount we budgeted in the 2018 appropriations.
Thank you. We need a motion and a second.
I'll move.
Second.
Does anyone have any questions on the system?
After
Yes.
I move, I have a question, I guess.
Yeah.
But is this something we send out to bid, or we don't have to because of the amount?
We don't have to because of the amount, and the installation and design is considered professional services too. So we are under the thresholds for formal bidding procedure.
I would just follow up too. I had that same question, just if we checked what was out there with other companies. Quite a few companies do this for whoever be administrator next. We just did it personally in our business, and I discussed it with Mr. Bagdonis, and it was a smaller system, but same idea, voice over internet. So far, so good. It works really well. But there are different challenges with the voice over internet, but it is a wave of the future, so felt comfortable with that. But I can tell you that several people tried to sell us a phone system, so they're really out there and competitive. But I thought the bid wasn't bad considering what we paid for that. So the handsets are a lot more on those systems, but you keep them and use them. So any other comments? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Anybody have any other information or unscheduled business this evening? Seeing none, we need a motion to go into executive session for conference with the law director, Ohio Revised Code 121.22 G2, purchase or sale of property for public purposes.
So moved?
Second?
Roll call, please.
Mayor Brody?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mrs. Bruno?
Yes.
Mrs. Duncan?
Yes.
Mrs. Pedro?
Yes.
Mrs. Bruno?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. There'll be no further business conducted when we return.